Imagine Jessica at 73 standing in her living room. What happened next was truly astonishing, even to Jessica. She didn't just manage to clear out her entire three-bedroom home in 2 days, she actually felt a sense of liberation she hadn't experienced in years. Her secret? 7 surprisingly ruthless tricks that completely go against all the usual decluttering advice. And here's the wonderful news. Any of us can do this, even if you feel overwhelmed, tired, or just don't know where to begin. I'm going to share Jessica's exact system with you today because what she discovered truly changed everything about how we, as seniors, can approach decluttering. What makes Jessica's story so incredibly powerful is this: she didn't spend months agonizing over every single item, which is what so much decluttering advice tells us to do. Instead, she used 7 counterintuitive tricks that are specifically designed for us. For seniors who are navigating a lifetime of possessions, often with limited energy and those deep emotional attachments to our belongings. By the end of this video, you'll have the precise roadmap Jessica used, broken down into individual, easy-to-follow steps. Now, the very first trick Jessica used, and this one is a game changer, is something called the triage method. It's actually borrowed from emergency medicine. Think about it. Doctors in an emergency room can't spend equal time on every single patient, right? Well, you can't spend equal time agonizing over every single possession either. This approach literally saved Jessica from that overwhelming feeling of analysis paralysis that had kept her stuck for 2 entire years. And trust me, we've all been there. So how does it work? Jessica, with a timer set for just 15 minutes per room, divided everything into 3 very clear, almost brutal categories. Category 1, can't live without it. This is for your absolute essentials: medications, crucial documents, a few cherished comfort items, and your daily necessities. We're talking about your prescription bottles, your birth certificate, and that one special coffee mug you reach for every single morning. Category 2, might need it someday. Now this, my friends, is your danger zone. This is where most of us get completely stuck, sometimes for years. Does that might need it someday pile sound familiar? And then there's category 3, haven't touched it in over a year. This one is automatic elimination. No exceptions, no second guessing. But here's the truly ruthless part, the secret most people won't tell you. Category 2, that might need it someday pile, gets treated exactly like Category 3. Jessica realized that might need it someday is often just fear talking, and fear, my dear friends, will keep you surrounded by clutter forever. She bravely gave herself permission to be wrong about a few items, knowing that was far better than staying trapped by indecision about absolutely everything. Jessica started her decluttering journey in the kitchen, which, let's be honest, often feels like the most logical place to begin because our needs there are usually pretty clear. In just 15 minutes, she made some eye-opening discoveries. She found 23 coffee mugs, even though she only drinks tea these days. Then there were 3 complete sets of china, untouched since her daughter's wedding way back in 1987. And don't even get me started on the kitchen gadgets. Enough to stock a small restaurant, she joked. Her triage was swift and, yes, a little merciless. She decided to keep just 2 favorite mugs, donate all those china sets, and get rid of 90% of the gadgets, including that bread maker she'd used exactly twice in a decade. Sound familiar? The real emotional breakthrough for Jessica came when she realized something profound. Keeping everything just in case hadn't made her feel secure, as she'd always thought it would. Instead, it had made her feel trapped, anxious, and utterly overwhelmed every time she opened a closet or a drawer. Can you relate to that feeling? Each room she tackled with this triage method gave her more confidence to be even more decisive with the next. By the time she got to room 3, she was actually excited to see how much she could let go of. The living room triage was equally revealing. 47 decorative pillows when she only had seating for 6 people, 12 throw blankets for a woman who keeps her house at a cozy 75 degrees, and enough candles to illuminate a cathedral. Yet she never burned candles because of safety concerns about leaving flames unattended. So I have to ask you, what's your biggest might need it someday category that's quietly taking over your space? Is it kitchen gadgets, clothes from different decades, or books you'll never reread? Share your thoughts in the comments below because recognizing your personal weakness is truly the first step to breaking free from that clutter cycle that's silently stealing your peace of mind. Jessica's second brilliant trick truly saved her from that crushing exhaustion that often stops us before we even begin decluttering. She stumbled upon something so crucial, yet it's often overlooked in most advice out there. What she realized is that for many of us, especially as we get a little older, we have about 10 minutes of really good, focused decision making energy before our minds just get tired and everything starts to feel overwhelming. After that point, it's so easy to just keep everything because making another decision feels like too much work. So Jessica set a timer for exactly 10 minutes for each small area she was tackling. And this is key, my friends. Not per room, but per specific area. Think one closet shelf, one kitchen drawer, or just one bathroom cabinet. When that timer buzzed, she stopped immediately, even if she wasn't completely finished with that little space. This one simple rule was a game changer. It prevented the overwhelm that had honestly paralyzed her for 2 long years after her husband's passing. Now, what made this strategy so incredibly effective? In just 10 minutes, you simply don't have time to overthink things. You're practically forced to trust your gut instincts. And let's be honest, our gut usually knows exactly what we truly need versus what we're holding onto out of guilt, obligation, or even a little irrational fear. That time pressure actually becomes your friend, not your enemy. Jessica, for example, decided to tackle her bedroom dresser first thing on day one. She started with the top drawer, giving herself 10 minutes to sort through decades of random accumulated items. Can you imagine what she found? Expired medications from 1998, 17 pens that no longer worked, Christmas cards from people she barely remembered, instruction manuals for appliances she'd thrown away years ago, and enough loose buttons to open a small craft store. In those incredibly focused 10 minutes, she filled an entire trash bag and rediscovered space she'd completely forgotten existed. The real genius here was in the stopping. By ending each session while she still felt energetic and mentally clear, she actually started looking forward to her next 10-minute sprint. Instead of dreading that overwhelming mountain of stuff, she transformed decluttering from an impossible marathon into these manageable, satisfying sprints that felt totally achievable. But here's the part that truly shocked her. Those 10-minute sessions started adding up incredibly fast. By the end of day one, she had completed 24 separate sessions. That's 4 solid hours of focused, productive decluttering without feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, or emotionally drained even once. She felt energized, not depleted. The psychological trick at play here is just brilliant. 10 minutes feels completely doable for anyone, even if you're dealing with mobility issues, chronic fatigue, or limited stamina. You're not committing to some grueling all-day marathon. It's just a short, focused sprint that you can absolutely handle. Between sessions, she'd do normal activities, maybe make a cup of tea, watch a few minutes of her morning show, or simply rest. This kept her refreshed and prevented that decision fatigue that makes so many of us just give up and keep everything, just to end the torture of choosing. Are you someone who tends to try and tackle entire rooms at once, only to get overwhelmed and quit? Tell me in the comments how that approach usually works out for you, because I guarantee Jessica's experience of burnout and frustration will sound painfully familiar. Now, for our third trick, and I'm going to be honest, this one feels a little brutal at first, but it is absolutely brilliant. Jessica tried something called the stranger test. She imagined a complete stranger, someone who knew nothing about her, going through her belongings after she was gone. Now, I know what you might be thinking. That sounds a bit morbid, right? But trust me, it's actually incredibly liberating psychology. She asked herself one simple question about every single item. Would a stranger understand why I kept this, or would they just think I was a hoarder? This mental shift, my friends, changed everything for her. It completely removed that personal, emotional charge from objects that had been paralyzing her for months. When you imagine someone else, someone objective, making decisions about your possessions, you suddenly see them with crystal clarity. You're not looking through that fog of guilt, nostalgia, or obligation anymore. That stack of magazines from 2003, a stranger would toss them in the recycling without a second thought. And those 47 decorative candles you've never burned because you're worried about fire hazards? They'd be gone, off to someone who would actually enjoy them. It's amazing how much easier it is to let go when you take yourself out of the equation. So, what's one item you know a stranger would immediately toss? Now, Jessica really put this test to work, especially with her sentimental items. And let's be honest, this is where so many of us get completely stuck, right? We just throw in the towel on decluttering. She had boxes and boxes of her kids' elementary school artwork. Absolutely sweet, meaningful, and full of memories. But here's the kicker. Would a stranger really keep 200 crayon drawings and finger paintings? Probably not, and that's okay. She lovingly chose the 10 most special pieces that truly captured her children's personalities, and without an ounce of guilt, let go of the rest. Then came the photo albums. Now that was the real challenge for this strategy. She had 23 albums, overflowing with blurry vacation photos, duplicates, and pictures of people she honestly couldn't even identify anymore. Applying the stranger test, she had a moment of clarity. Most of these photos meant nothing to anyone but her. And if we're being truly honest, many didn't even spark much joy for her anymore. So, she condensed those 23 albums into 3 beautiful ones that actually told her story and brought a smile to her face, rather than feeling like an obligation. What made this approach so incredibly powerful, you ask? When you take away the guilt and the feeling of obligation from keeping things, you start holding on to items because they genuinely add value to your current life. It's not about feeling like you should keep them or worrying that someone might judge you for letting them go. The stranger test also worked wonders for her wardrobe. Jessica had dresses from her teaching career that hadn't seen the light of day in 15 years, along with formal suits that simply didn't fit her lifestyle or her body anymore. Would a stranger keep professional clothes for someone who's been happily retired for over a decade? Of course not. So out they went, ready to help young teachers just starting their careers. But the biggest eye-opener came with her extensive book collection. She had over 300 books she'd read once, and let's face it, would honestly never read again. We're talking romance novels, outdated computer manuals, diet books from the 80s, and self-help books that had already served their purpose. The stranger test was brutally clear. Keeping books you'll never reread is often just hoarding with an educational excuse attached. This test even worked for kitchen items. Would a stranger understand why she kept 12 spatulas, 8 can openers, or enough Tupperware to feed a small army? The honest answer helped her pare it down to what she actually used. So I'm curious, what's that one category of items you hold on to that would make absolutely no sense to a stranger? Drop a comment below and be brutally honest. We're all guilty of keeping things that don't serve us anymore, but sometimes feel too guilty to release them. Now, let's talk about Jessica's fourth trick, and this one really tackles the biggest fear that keeps so many of us surrounded by clutter for years, even decades. It's that nagging thought, what if I need this someday and can't replace it? Sound familiar? Jessica came up with something she calls the replacement reality check, and honestly, it completely dismantled most of her reasons for holding on to things. This reality check asks 3 really honest questions that get right to the heart of our just-in-case mentality. For every single item she hesitated to let go of, she made herself answer these questions truthfully. First, she'd ask, if I genuinely needed this exact item tomorrow, could I realistically get another one? Second, what would it actually cost me to replace this item in today's market? And third, and this one's a real eye-opener, in the last 5 years, how many times have I actually needed this specific item for anything important? This reality check systematically helped her see through most of those just-in-case justifications that had been keeping her feeling trapped. How many times has that just-in-case item actually saved you? Let's talk about Jessica's collection of screwdrivers. She had about a dozen of them, tucked away in various junk drawers. Now, if she suddenly needed a screwdriver, could she get one? Absolutely. A quick trip to the hardware store, a neighbor, or even the dollar store would do the trick. Replacing a whole set would cost less than $15. And guess how many times she'd actually used more than one screwdriver in the last 5 years? 0. So she kept one good one and happily donated the rest. What a relief. The real aha moment for Jessica came when she understood that holding on to everything just in case was actually costing her more than simply replacing something if the need ever arose. Think about it. She was paying the hidden costs of storage space, mental stress, extra cleaning time, and living in a chaotic environment, all for the theoretical savings of not having to buy a $5 replacement item once every few years. When you look at the numbers, it just didn't add up, did it? Jessica bravely applied this same logic to her craft supplies. She had boxes of yarn for knitting projects that would likely never start, fabric scraps from sewing she no longer enjoyed, and art supplies that had literally dried up years ago. This reality check was tough, but oh so liberating. If she ever decided to take up watercolor painting again, buying fresh new supplies would give her much better results than trying to use crusty paints from 1987. Those old supplies weren't preserving opportunities, they were just taking up valuable space. But the biggest revelation came when she looked at the furniture stored in her basement and garage. She had dining room chairs just in case she hosted a big dinner party. Time for another reality check. She hadn't hosted more than 4 people in 8 years, and if she ever did want to host a larger gathering, she could easily rent chairs for less than the annual cost of storing them. Those chairs were literally costing her storage space for an event that would probably never happen. The kitchen appliances offered some of the most dramatic reality checks. That bread maker she'd used twice in 10 years? If she suddenly developed a passion for homemade bread, she could buy a better, newer model for about $20 at any thrift store. And that juicer, collecting dust since her 2015 health kick? A brand new one would cost around $30 at Walmart. Meanwhile, these appliances were stealing her precious counter space, making her kitchen feel cramped and chaotic every single day. Her extensive tool collection got the same treatment. Specialty tools for home repairs she no longer did herself? Those found new homes with young homeowners who would actually use them. She kept her basic tools and wisely accepted that hiring professionals for major repairs was simply more practical at her age than keeping equipment she hadn't touched in years. Now here's an uncomfortable truth that might sting a little. Most of what you're keeping just in case will never actually be needed. And for those few things you might need someday, they are so easily and cheaply replaceable in our modern world. So what's one item you're holding on to that you could replace for under $20? Share it with us in the comments below. Let's do some reality checking together and free ourselves from expensive clutter, shall we? Now, for our 5th trick, and this one truly saved Jessica's sanity. It's the secret weapon against that emotional burnout that often derails our best decluttering intentions. Jessica realized she couldn't treat every single possession as equally important. Instead, she learned to invest her precious limited emotional energy only in the items and decisions that truly resonated with her. This is absolutely vital for us, especially as we get a little older, because let's be honest, we simply don't have endless energy to agonize over every single object in our homes, do we? So she developed what she called an energy investment scale, rating items from 1 to 10. And let me tell you, this system completely transformed her approach. Items that rated a 1 on her scale got 0 emotional energy. Straight to donation or the trash. No analysis, no guilt. But those level 10 items? They received careful consideration, proper storage, and a place of honor in her new life. Everything in between was sorted based on how much of her precious emotional energy it truly deserved. Her book collection is a perfect example of this strategy in action. Those romance novels she'd read once and knew she'd never pick up again? A solid 1, straight to the donation box without a second thought. Her late husband's technical manuals rated a 3. She spent maybe 30 seconds deciding her adult children might want them before boxing them up. But her grandmother's handwritten cookbook, filled with cherished family recipes, that was a definite 9. She carefully cleaned it, protected it in archival plastic, and gave it a place of honor in her new kitchen. This strategy is a game changer because it prevents that emotional exhaustion that stops most decluttering attempts dead in their tracks. Instead of agonizing over every single item equally and wearing herself out on decisions that didn't truly matter, Jessica learned to quickly identify what deserved her precious emotional energy and what absolutely didn't deserve even a moment's hesitation. It's about being kind to yourself while still making progress. The real breakthrough for Jessica came when she finally tackled her overwhelming bedroom closet. Can you relate to this? She had 67 pieces of clothing crammed into a space meant for maybe 30 items, but honestly, she only wore about 12 pieces regularly. Using her energy scale, most of her clothes rated a 1 to 3. Easy to donate without drama, guilt, or those endless internal debates we all have. The few pieces she genuinely loved and felt great wearing, those rated an 8 to 10. Those were the keepers, to be organized properly with good hangers and adequate space. This systematic approach cleared her entire closet in just 45 minutes instead of the whole weekend she'd been dreading. But here's where the strategy revealed something truly fascinating, and it might surprise you too. Jessica discovered that the items she'd been spending the most emotional energy worrying about were often the least important to her actual daily comfort and happiness. She'd been agonizing over decorative items that no one ever noticed, while completely ignoring the functional clutter that was making her daily routines frustrating and inefficient. Sound familiar? The garage became the ultimate test of her energy investment strategy. Decades of might be useful someday items rated mostly 1 or 2 on her energy scale. Out they went without ceremony. Garden tools for a garden she no longer maintained due to arthritis. Camping gear for trips she no longer took. Sporting equipment for activities she'd outgrown. She cleared 80% of her garage by simply refusing to invest emotional energy in items that didn't serve her current reality. The psychological relief was immediate and profound. When you stop spending emotional energy on objects that don't enhance your life, you suddenly have so much more energy available for the things and people that actually do matter. Jessica found herself having energy for phone calls with friends, trying new recipes, and even considering dating again. Her paperwork got the same treatment. Tax returns older than 7 years? Rated a 1, shredded immediately. Important documents like insurance policies? Rated a 10, properly filed and organized. Everything in between got sorted quickly based on actual legal and practical importance, rather than that vague anxiety about what if I need this someday. So I'm curious, what items in your home are stealing your emotional energy without giving you anything positive in return? Tell me in the comments below. Sometimes just naming these energy vampires out loud helps you realize they need to go immediately. Now, Jessica's sixth trick. This one really surprised everyone, even her own adult children. She started making every single decluttering decision based on who she was actively becoming, not who she used to be, or who others expected her to remain. It's what I like to call the future self-test, and it asks one incredibly powerful question. Does keeping this item truly serve the person I'm growing into, or is it anchoring me to a past that's already complete? This approach was absolutely revolutionary, and here's why. Most of us, especially as we get a little older, tend to declutter based on guilt about the past, or in an obligation to maintain old identities. We rarely focus on the excitement of who we're becoming in this wonderful new chapter of life. Jessica completely flipped that script. Instead of asking, how can I bear to get rid of this? She started asking, how does keeping this help me become the vibrant, joyful person I want to be in my remaining years? It's a game changer, isn't it? Jessica's extensive collection of business suits provided the first real test of this strategy, and it was quite a moment. She'd been a high-powered executive for 30 years, and those suits represented decades of achievement, respect, and her professional identity. But here's the thing. Her future self was a relaxed retiree who volunteered at the animal shelter, took watercolor classes, and traveled to places she'd never had time to visit. Those power suits weren't serving her future. They were anchoring her to a past identity that was already beautifully complete. It was time to let them go. Her book collection revealed another profound shift in thinking. She had multiple shelves filled with business and management books that had been absolutely crucial to her career success. But her future self wanted to learn about gardening, travel, photography, and maybe even creative writing. Keeping outdated business books wasn't honoring her accomplished past, it was actually preventing her from embracing new interests and growth opportunities. Can you relate to that feeling of holding on to something that no longer sparks joy or learning? Here's what made this approach so incredibly powerful. When you make decisions based on your future self instead of your past self, letting go becomes exciting instead of painful. Jessica wasn't losing her past achievements. She was making physical and mental room for her next adventure. The craft room transformation was the most dramatic example. Instead of keeping supplies for hobbies she'd honestly lost interest in years ago, she courageously cleared space for the art studio she'd been dreaming about since retirement. Out went the dusty sewing machine and mountains of fabric she'd never used. In came a proper easel, quality watercolor supplies, and natural light from a previously blocked window. Imagine the joy of creating that space. But the most emotionally challenging moment came when she applied this test to her late husband's belongings. She realized that keeping everything exactly as he'd left it wasn't honoring his memory. It was preventing her from healing and moving forward into whatever remained of her own life. She kept the most meaningful items that genuinely brought comfort and happy memories, then donated the rest to help other families. Her husband, she knew, would have wanted her to live, not to maintain a shrine. It's a powerful lesson in grief and moving forward, isn't it? The kitchen makeover demonstrated the practical magic of this approach. Her past self had needed industrial-level cooking equipment for entertaining business colleagues and hosting large family gatherings. Her future self wanted a simple, peaceful space perfect for making tea, preparing light meals, and maybe growing a small indoor herb garden. She donated the commercial-grade pots and appliances, creating space for the cozy cooking environment that matched her new lifestyle. It's all about aligning your space with who you are now and who you're becoming. This test works because it gives you complete permission to evolve and change instead of remaining frozen in old patterns. You're not betraying your past accomplishments by making room for new experiences. You're honoring the growth and wisdom that come with age and changing circumstances. So I have to ask you, who is your future self, and what does that emerging person need to thrive in the time you have left? Share your vision in the comments below. Sometimes declaring your future identity publicly helps make that transformation real and gives you the courage to release what no longer serves your evolution. Let's inspire each other. Now, for Jessica's seventh and final trick, and honestly, this is what truly sealed her complete transformation and helped her avoid that nagging regret that so often sabotages our best decluttering efforts. What did she do? She created meaningful completion ceremonies for each major category of items she decided to let go of. And let me tell you, this isn't just some feel-good fluff. It's a psychological necessity, especially for us as we're letting go of a lifetime of accumulated memories and meaningful possessions. Instead of just sneaking items out in garbage bags, feeling a bit ashamed, Jessica made a conscious choice to truly honor what these possessions had meant to her life before saying a proper goodbye. This ceremonial approach completely transformed any guilt she felt into genuine gratitude, and it absolutely prevented that second guessing that makes us rescue items from donation bags at the very last minute. Sound familiar? In our next block, I'll share some concrete examples of how you can create your own meaningful ceremonies. Let's talk about how Jessica put these ceremonies into practice, because this is where it really gets interesting. For her extensive business wardrobe, she created what she called a career celebration ceremony. Imagine this. She spent about 10 minutes holding her favorite power suit, really letting herself remember all those proud professional moments, the promotions she'd earned, the tough negotiations she'd won, the teams she'd led to success. Then with a heartfelt blessing, she released those clothes, hoping they'd help another woman achieve her own professional dreams. She donated them to a wonderful nonprofit that helps women enter the workforce. What a beautiful way to pass on that energy, right? The book ceremony also became incredibly meaningful. Instead of just dropping off boxes at the library, she took the time to write brief thank you notes to authors who had truly influenced her thinking. She'd slip these notes right into the books. Imagine finding a note that says, "Thank you for teaching me about leadership," or "This book helped me through my divorce. I hope it helps someone else." Future readers actually discovered these notes, and several even contacted her to share how much her messages meant to them. Isn't that just lovely? But the photo ceremony? That was the most emotionally powerful transformation of all. Instead of just tossing duplicate photos in the trash like unwanted clutter, she held what she called a memory celebration. She thanked each batch of pictures for capturing those precious moments, then gently released them, knowing that the memories live permanently in her heart, not in cardboard boxes taking up valuable closet space. This ceremonial approach created such genuine closure instead of that lingering regret we often feel. Without these rituals, Jessica found herself second-guessing decisions, even wanting to rescue items from donation bags. But these ceremonies made each decision feel final, peaceful, and truly meaningful, rather than like a loss. It's about honoring your past, not erasing it. Which of these ceremonies resonates most with you? Now, the most elaborate ceremony was reserved for her adult children's artwork. Instead of just tossing them, she photographed every single piece she wasn't keeping, then created this beautiful digital album she called My Children's Masterpieces. Can you imagine? She then ceremonially thanked each drawing for all the joy it had brought before finally letting go of the physical copies. And here's the heartwarming part. Her adult children were actually moved to tears when she shared that digital album with them. Suddenly, they had more access to their childhood creativity than ever before, and those precious memories were preserved forever without needing any physical storage space. It was a win-win. But the most surprising ceremony to me was for items that were broken, worn out, or just no longer functional. Instead of feeling that familiar pang of guilt about things that were damaged beyond repair, Jessica created these retirement ceremonies. She would thank these faithful items for their years of service before gently letting them rest in peace. She thanked her worn-out favorite sweater for keeping her warm through countless winters before letting it go to textile recycling. Even kitchen items got this special treatment. She thanked her mother's mixing bowls for helping create thousands of family meals before passing them to a young neighbor who was just starting to cook. And she held her wedding china one last time, remembering all those wonderful dinner parties and holiday celebrations before donating it to help another family create their own special memories. Isn't that a beautiful way to look at it? The most profound ceremony, though, was for items connected to her late husband. She created what she called a love celebration, where she held each meaningful item, shared a specific memory out loud, and then, with a clear heart, decided whether keeping it brought her comfort or pain. Items that brought comfort, of course, stayed. But items that brought pain were blessed and then released, often to help other families. By the end of those 48 hours, Jessica had completed dozens of these small but incredibly meaningful ceremonies. Each one reinforced that she wasn't losing her past or dishonoring memories. Instead, she was celebrating her life's journey and consciously making room for whatever wonderful adventures remained ahead. Have you ever struggled with that feeling of guilt when letting go of sentimental items? Tell me in the comments what kind of ceremony might help you release things with love and gratitude instead of shame and loss. I'd love to hear your thoughts. When the moving truck pulled up exactly 48 hours later, Jessica was completely ready. But the real magic wasn't just her empty rooms, it was the incredible sense of freedom and possibility she felt. She had thoughtfully packed only what truly served her future self, donated 12 truckloads of items to families who really needed them, and most importantly, said proper goodbyes to a lifetime of cherished memories. 3 months later, Jessica called me from her new apartment, and she told me something I'll never forget. She said, "I thought I was just clearing out my house, but I was actually clearing out my life for the next chapter." And guess what? She's now teaching art classes at the senior center, volunteering at 3 different organizations, and yes, dating for the first time in 20 years. Those 7 ruthless tricks didn't just help her declutter, they helped her discover who she was truly becoming. That's the real secret, my friends. Decluttering isn't just about getting rid of things. It's about making room for the life you actually want to live. If Jessica's story resonates with you, hit that like button right now and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. These 7 tricks truly work, but only if you actually put them into action. So which trick will you start with? Tell me in the comments below. I respond to every single one. And if you're serious about creating your own senior reset, click that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I share new strategies every week that are specifically designed for people who are ready to make their next chapter their absolute best chapter.